It's been 6 months. 6 months of silence, confusion, and that hollow feeling in my chest that no amount of time seems to fix. 6 months since the moment I realized that everything I thought I knew about my wife, my life, and myself was a carefully crafted illusion. You see, this is the story of how I discovered that the woman I had trusted with everything, my home, my heart, my future, wasn't the person I thought she was. But here's the thing. I didn't find out through a confession or some dramatic confrontation. No, I didn't even find out by catching her red-handed, like you might expect. I found out by hearing something I wasn't supposed to hear. It started with a phone call. Not from her, but to her. I didn't mean to overhear it. I wasn't snooping, I swear. It was just one of those things that happened by chance, like a bolt of lightning out of the clear blue sky. I had been coming home late from work, as usual. Another day of endless meetings, emails, and the kind of stress that gnaws at you slowly, day by day. But this time, when I walked through the front door, something felt off. Yasmin's car wasn't in the driveway, which was unusual. She was supposed to be home by now, yet the house was dark and still. No sound of the TV, no faint hum of music from the kitchen, no scent of the candle she liked to burn at night. I shrugged it off at first. Maybe she was out for a walk or running an errand. I grabbed a cold beer from the fridge and collapsed on the couch, hoping to catch my breath before diving back into my emails. I scrolled through my phone for a few minutes, checking for messages, when I heard it. A faint buzzing sound. It came from the hallway, from the direction of the kitchen. I hesitated. I didn't want to be that guy. The guy who snooped. But curiosity got the best of me. I stood up and walked toward the kitchen. Her phone was on the counter. It wasn't unusual for Yasmin to leave it there when she was busy, but this time, the screen was lit up and the notification was glaringly visible. The name at the top of the message thread caught my attention. It wasn't her usual contact names, friends, family, colleagues. No, this was someone named Jake. I wasn't sure why it bothered me, but something about that name seemed unfamiliar, out of place. My heart beat a little faster as I picked it up. I knew I shouldn't, but I did. I opened the message thread. The messages weren't long, but they were enough. Can't wait to see you tonight. Let's make this one unforgettable, babe. My mind went blank for a second. I felt the blood drain from my face. What was this? What was really going on here? It took everything in me not to throw the phone across the room, but I stayed still. I read the rest of the messages, the ones from the past few weeks. There was no mistaking it now. She had been seeing someone else. Someone who wasn't me. I didn't know how long I stood there, reading through the texts. My mind was a blur of confusion, anger, and disbelief. This couldn't be real, I thought. This was just some mistake. But no, there was no mistake. I had to hear it from her. I needed to know the truth, but I couldn't bring myself to confront her just yet. Not like this. I didn't know who Jake was. I didn't know what this meant for our relationship, for our life together. I didn't even know where to go from here. But one thing was clear. The woman I had loved, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone else, had been hiding something. But here's the part that still haunts me. Yasmin didn't know I knew. She had no idea that I had heard everything. And that's when I realized something about myself. I wasn't angry, at least not yet. I wasn't ready to confront her, or yell, or cry. I wasn't even sure what I was feeling. It was something else. It was a silence. A deep, eerie silence, almost like the calm before a storm. That night, I waited for her to come home. I didn't say a word. I didn't mention the phone, the texts, or anything else. I just sat there in the dark, listening for the sound of her car pulling into the driveway. When Yasmin finally arrived, she smiled at me as she walked through the door, acting as if everything was normal. But I knew better now. I had heard the words. I had heard everything. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do about it yet. But something inside me had changed. It wasn't the first time I'd suspected something was off, but now I knew. I couldn't unhear what I had heard. I couldn't unsee what I had seen. And so I sat there, in the silence of our home, listening to her voice, knowing that this wasn't the woman I had married anymore. But she had no idea. She had no idea that I knew everything. The night dragged on, long after Yasmin had gone to bed, and I lay awake beside her. The silence between us felt suffocating. She was sound asleep, her back turned toward me, her soft breathing the only sound in the room. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying what I had discovered. Her words, the texts, everything. It wasn't that I didn't trust her. It was that I no longer trusted what I thought I knew about her, about us. I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts racing. I had never been a confrontational person, and this was not how I imagined finding out the truth. I should have been prepared for something like this. There had been little signs, moments where her attention seemed divided, where her warmth felt distant. But I was too wrapped up in my own world to truly notice. I knew I couldn't go on like this. I couldn't just pretend that everything was okay, but I also wasn't sure how to handle what I had learned. The anger I should have felt hadn't come. Instead, I felt numb. I wanted to shake her awake, to demand answers, to scream, to confront her about everything. But something stopped me. It was like a twisted part of me wanted to see how far this would go, wanted to know just how deep this lie ran. I spent the entire night awake, staring at the back of Yasmin's head, wondering if she could feel my gaze burning into her. Did she know I knew? Could she sense that I was no longer the same man lying beside her? The morning came, and nothing changed. Yasmin woke up with her usual energy, her usual smile, and a simple, "Good morning, babe." We went about our day as if nothing had happened. She made coffee, I got dressed, we both went through the motions. But it was different now. It felt different. I could feel the weight of her secrets pressing down on me, suffocating me, but I didn't say a word. As the days passed, I found myself slipping further into this strange, silent existence. I began observing her more closely, watching her every move, every conversation, every smile. I started noticing things I had never really paid attention to before. The way she responded to certain questions, the way she hesitated when I asked about her day. But none of it was obvious. It was all subtle. It was like living in a house of mirrors, where every reflection seemed real, but something was always slightly off. One evening, a week after I had discovered the texts, Yasmin came home late. Again, it had become a pattern now. I didn't ask where she had been. I didn't even pretend to care anymore. She seemed more tired than usual, and there was something in her eyes, something I couldn't quite place. She had always been energetic, full of life, but tonight, she seemed drained. She barely said a word as she set down her things and walked into the kitchen. It was as if she was avoiding me, or maybe avoiding something else, something bigger. I followed her into the kitchen, watching her as she prepared something to eat. I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I had to say something, anything. But how could I even begin? How could I ask her about the messages without exposing what I already knew? How could I pretend to be the oblivious husband when I had the truth sitting right in front of me? "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice almost sounding foreign to me. She looked at me, her eyes briefly meeting mine, but she didn't answer right away. Instead, she just shrugged, her lips forming a small, tight smile. "Yeah, everything's fine." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But her answer didn't sit right with me. There was a disconnect in her voice, a faint tremor that she was trying to hide. But she didn't notice that I had caught it. I knew her too well. And it hit me again. The truth was right in front of me. She was lying. And I was just waiting for the moment when she would finally crack, when she would tell me the truth. That night, after dinner, I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to know. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was normal. I stood up, walked to the living room, and sat down on the couch. My heart was pounding. My thoughts were racing. "Yasmin," I said, trying to sound calm, trying to keep my voice steady, "who is Jake?" I couldn't look at her when I asked. I was afraid of what I would see in her eyes. Would she freeze? Would she panic? Would she lie to my face and act like I didn't know everything? There was a long pause, a deafening silence. Then, she finally spoke, but her voice was shaky. "What do you mean?" she asked, almost too innocently, like the name I had just dropped was foreign to her. I knew she was lying. I could see it in her eyes. The slight twitch of her lip, the way she avoided my gaze, the way her hands fidgeted nervously. She had always been so composed, so confident, but now she seemed fragile, like a porcelain doll on the verge of shattering. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice now breaking through the calm facade I had been desperately trying to maintain. "I saw the messages, Yasmin. I saw everything." For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, her shoulders slumped, and she let out a long sigh, like she had been holding her breath for far too long. "Marko, it's not what you think," she finally said, but her words didn't sound convincing. They sounded rehearsed, as if she had practiced them over and over in her mind. But there was something in her tone that gave it away. Something in the way she said my name that made me realize just how much she had been hiding. How long had this been going on? How deep did this betrayal run? I didn't wait for her to explain. I couldn't. I didn't need to hear the lies anymore. The truth was already clear. The silence between us wasn't just the absence of words. It was the absence of trust, the absence of love. It was the silence that followed the death of what we once had. And in that moment, I knew everything had changed. But Yasmin still didn't know the depth of what I knew. And she wouldn't, not yet. Not until I was ready to make my next move. It was a strange, almost surreal feeling when Yasmin finally spoke. The words she uttered seemed to float in the air, their weight heavier than any accusation or confrontation could ever be. Marko, it's not what you think. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but I could hear the crack in it, the tremor of a lie desperately trying to escape her lips. I felt a strange calm come over me as I stared at her. In that moment, I realized just how much I had underestimated the distance that had grown between us. I wasn't angry. Not yet, at least. I wasn't screaming or throwing things, like you might expect from someone who just found out their spouse was unfaithful. Instead, I was numb. I was staring at a stranger, sitting across from me in our living room, pretending to be someone she wasn't. Yasmin had always been the kind of woman who wore her emotions on her sleeve. She didn't hide behind facades. Yet here she was, trying to act normal, trying to explain away the unexplainable. I stood up slowly, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I didn't want to say it just yet. "Don't lie to me, Yasmin," I said, my voice calm and steady, despite everything inside me telling me to scream. I saw the messages. I saw everything. She flinched, and in that small movement, I could see the cracks begin to form. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Instead, she just stared at me, her eyes wide and defensive, as if trying to gauge how much I knew. I knew her well enough by now to see the gears turning in her mind, calculating her next words. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. "Marko, please. It's complicated," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, almost pleading. "You don't understand." But I did understand. I understood more than she realized. I had spent years of my life with this woman, and in a single moment, everything I thought I knew about her and our relationship shattered. I had the proof, the undeniable evidence that she had been seeing someone else, someone who wasn't me. The question wasn't whether she had betrayed me, it was why. Why had she kept this from me for so long? I crossed my arms and leaned against the kitchen counter, watching her, trying to read the woman I thought I knew. She was nervous now, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her shirt, her eyes darting to the floor, to the window, anywhere but me. She was unraveling, piece by piece. And I couldn't look away. "Who is he, Yasmin?" I asked again, my voice tight with restraint. "Jake. Who is he?" She looked up at me, and for a split second, I saw something in her eyes. Guilt. Shame. Fear. It was fleeting, but it was there. Then, she took a deep breath, as if preparing for something. He's just a friend, Marko. It started as nothing, but it turned into something more. Something more? I repeated, my heart pounding now. Something more than what, Yasmin? I read the messages. It's not just something more. You've been meeting him. You've been seeing him behind my back for months. She shook her head, but there was no conviction in it. "I never meant for it to get this far," she said, her voice trembling. "It just happened. It wasn't supposed to. I was feeling lost, Marko. And Jake, he made me feel alive again. I didn't want to hurt you." The words were like a knife twisting in my gut. Feeling alive again? I scoffed, almost without thinking. Is that what this was about? Because you felt bored or lost? You didn't think to talk to me, Yasmin? You didn't think to be honest with me? She fell silent again, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't want to see her cry, but I couldn't stop myself from feeling angry, betrayed. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't something that could be chalked up to a brief lapse in judgment. This was a deliberate choice. She had made this decision again and again, each time choosing him over me. I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. I had heard enough. But before I could speak, she reached out, her hand shaking. "Marko, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened. I didn't know how to stop it." "You didn't know how to stop it?" I repeated, disbelief flooding my chest. "You didn't know how to stop sleeping with another man? How long was this going on, Yasmin? How long was I living in a lie?" Her shoulders slumped, and she finally looked me in the eyes. There was no more hiding behind excuses. No more pretending. The truth, raw and ugly, hung in the air between us. It started a year ago, she admitted, her voice barely audible. At first, it was just texting. Just talking, you know? But then, it escalated. I don't know how it got this far. I never planned for this, but I kept going. And I couldn't stop. A year. A full year. I had been living with her, sharing a bed, planning a future, while she had been with him. It was like the ground had shifted beneath me, and I was falling, spinning in a world that no longer made sense. I didn't know what to do next. There were so many things I wanted to say, so many things I wanted to scream at her, but none of it felt right. I didn't want to break down in front of her. I didn't want to let her see how much this hurt. I had spent so long building this life, believing in the love we shared, and now it was all falling apart. Instead, I turned away from her, unable to face the woman I had once trusted. I need time, Yasmin, I said, my voice shaking. I need time to think, to figure out what to do. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't beg. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. And as I walked out of the room, I could hear her sobbing behind me. But I couldn't bring myself to turn around. I couldn't face her anymore, not in that moment. I didn't know where I was going or what I was supposed to do next. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that house, in that life, with her lies and her betrayal hanging over me. So I left. I walked out of the door and into the night, unsure of where I was headed, but certain of one thing. I was done, and nothing would ever be the same again. That was the moment I understood what silence truly meant. It wasn't just the absence of words. It was the presence of everything unspoken. The lies, the pain, the years of trust now broken. The silence that followed was a silence of truth, and of a love that no longer existed. The days after I left that night were the longest of my life. The world seemed to slow down, everything spinning in a haze, the weight of Yasmin's betrayal hanging over me like an anchor. I hadn't planned on leaving, but when I walked out the door, something in me snapped. The truth was too much to bear, and I couldn't stay in the same place, pretending that nothing had changed. But leaving was only the first part of the puzzle. What came next? I had no idea. I found myself wandering aimlessly around the city, not caring where I went, just needing to put as much distance between me and that house. The house that was supposed to be our home, where we built our life together. It felt like everything inside of me was falling apart. I couldn't go back to my apartment, and I couldn't go to a friend's place either. I didn't want anyone to know what had happened. I didn't want anyone to see me like this, lost, vulnerable, broken. After hours of walking, I ended up in a dimly lit bar, the kind I had passed by 100 times but never thought to enter. I wasn't there for company or for comfort. I didn't even want to drink. I just needed to feel something else other than the hollow emptiness that had consumed me. I sat at the bar, ordered a whiskey, and let the warmth of it burn down my throat, hoping it would quiet the storm in my head. But as I sat there, alone in my thoughts, the reality of what had happened started to sink in. It wasn't just the affair that hurt. It wasn't just the lies or the deception. It was the realization that the woman I had shared everything with, the woman I had trusted completely, had never truly been mine. At least, not in the way I thought. There had always been something beneath the surface, something I hadn't been able to see or understand. For the first time, I thought back to the beginning, to how we had met, how I had fallen in love with her so easily. Yasmin had always been full of life, full of passion. When we first started dating, she was everything I had wanted, a challenge, a mystery, someone who kept me on my toes. But as time went on, as life became routine, I had become complacent. I had stopped seeing her the way I did when we first met. I had stopped noticing the little things, the moments when she seemed distant or distracted. I had thought it was just life, just the pressures of work and everything else that came with adulthood. I never imagined it could be something bigger. Now, as I sat there, nursing my drink, it dawned on me that the cracks had been there all along. I had just been too blind to see them. But how could I have known? How could I have suspected something like this? Yasmin had always been so open with me, so involved in our life. Or at least, I thought she had been. The whiskey wasn't enough to numb the pain, so I ordered another. And another. I sat there for hours, alone in the crowd of strangers, trying to drown out the nagging questions that filled my head. How long had she been seeing him? Was this the first time, or had it been going on for months, maybe even longer? I wanted to know everything, but I didn't want to hear the answers. I was afraid of the truth, afraid of how deep the betrayal ran. Around midnight, I finally decided to leave. I stumbled out of the bar, the alcohol in my veins making everything feel foggy and distant. I had no idea where I was going, no idea what I was doing. I just needed to get away. I needed to feel something other than the crushing weight of everything that had happened. But then, as I was walking down the empty streets, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen, expecting it to be a random notification, maybe an email or a text from a friend. But when I saw the name, I froze. It was Yasmin. I don't know why I answered. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was the part of me that still wanted answers, still wanted to hear her side. But when I swiped the screen and put the phone to my ear, I didn't expect the calm, almost apologetic voice on the other end. Marko, please. Yasmin's voice was soft, almost fragile, like she was walking on eggshells. I need to talk to you. Please. I know you're upset. I know I've hurt you, but I need you to listen. Her words hung in the air, but I didn't speak. I couldn't. I was too consumed by the anger and hurt that had been building inside me all day. I couldn't bring myself to say anything. But Yasmin, for the first time since all of this started, sounded vulnerable, genuinely vulnerable. I never wanted to hurt you, Marko. I never wanted things to get like this. She paused, and I could hear her take a shaky breath. I made a mistake, and I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try. I need to explain. I felt a cold wave of nausea wash over me. I had heard her words before, promises, excuses, pleas, but they didn't matter anymore. They didn't change the fact that she had betrayed me, that she had crossed a line that could never be erased. Why? I finally found my voice, hoarse from the emotions that had been boiling inside me. Why, Yasmin? Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you tell me what was going on? There was a long pause before she responded, and when she did, it was like she was speaking from a place of regret, as if she had already accepted the weight of her actions. I was scared, Marko. Scared of losing you, scared of losing myself. And Jake, he made me feel wanted again. He made me feel like I was something more than just a wife. I know it doesn't make sense. I know I've hurt you beyond repair, but I'm so sorry. I just need a chance to make it right. I didn't know how to respond. What was I supposed to say? Was I supposed to forgive her? Was I supposed to just move on from this? The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again, if I could ever look at her the same way. But as I stood there in the middle of the night, with her voice on the other end of the line, I realized something that terrified me even more than her betrayal. I didn't know who I was without her. And that thought, that crushing realization, made me more afraid than anything else. The silence after Yasmin's confession was deafening. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, feeling the weight of her words sink into me. I was scared, Marko. Scared of losing you, scared of losing myself. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her that she had already lost me, that nothing she said could erase what had happened. But I didn't. I just stood there, frozen in the cold night air, the city's faint buzz echoing around me, as though I were miles away from it all. Do you really think that's enough? I finally asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Do you think I can just forget about everything? About the lies? About Jake? There was a moment of silence, and I almost thought she was going to hang up. I almost hoped she would. But then, in the softest, most fragile tone I had ever heard from her, she spoke again. I don't expect you to forgive me, Marko. I don't even expect you to stay. I just need you to understand that I'm not the person you think I am. I'm not perfect, and I'm sorry for everything. I clenched my fists, the anger building inside me, but I couldn't quite release it. I couldn't process it all at once. How could I? The woman I had loved, the woman I had shared my life with, was a stranger to me now. She was someone I didn't even recognize. She had shattered everything, and now she was asking me to understand, asking me to be patient. I couldn't wrap my head around it. You think I don't know that? I bit back, the bitterness creeping into my words. I understand that you've been lying to me for months, Yasmin. I understand that while I've been here, working, living, trying to build something with you, you've been with someone else. And you think I'm just supposed to understand? Her breath hitched, and I heard her sob, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. How could I? Marko, I know I've hurt you. I've made the worst mistake of my life, but I swear to you, I never meant to fall for him. It was just supposed to be a way to feel something again, to feel wanted. I was drowning in my own unhappiness, and I didn't know how to get out. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to slam the phone down and never look back. But there was something in her voice, something that still made me hold on, if only for a little longer. I didn't know if it was pity or guilt, or maybe even the remnants of a love I hadn't fully let go of, but I couldn't bring myself to hang up. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "You've broken me, Yasmin," I said quietly, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I don't know if I can come back from this. I don't know if we can come back from this." There was no reply at first. The minutes dragged by, and for a moment, I thought she had hung up. But then I heard her voice again, small and defeated. "I don't want to lose you, Marko. Please. I don't know how to make this right, but I need you to give me a chance to try." I didn't know what I expected to hear from her, but it certainly wasn't this. Was this genuine remorse, or just a desperate plea for forgiveness because she didn't want to be alone? The truth was, I didn't know anymore. I didn't know if her words were real, or if they were just the last thread she was clinging to in order to keep me from walking away completely. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I said, the words slipping out like a confession of my own. "I don't know if I can believe anything you say anymore." And that was the truth, wasn't it? I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way. How could I? The woman I had once trusted with my entire life had betrayed me in a way I never could have imagined. What did trust even mean after that? Was there any way to rebuild it? Or was it gone forever, like the pieces of glass from a shattered mirror? "I'm sorry," she whispered again, and it was the most honest thing I had heard from her in days. But it still wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to fix what was broken or to erase the images in my mind of her with him. It wasn't enough to mend the gaping wound she had carved into my chest. "I'll give you time," I said finally, the words leaving my lips before I could stop them. "But that's all I can give you. I need time to think, to process this." "I'll wait," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll wait however long it takes. Just please, don't leave me. I'll do anything, Marko." But it was too late for her to promise me anything. She had already made her choices, and I had already made mine. The choice to walk away from everything I thought I knew, to step into a future that was now filled with uncertainty and pain. "I'm not sure I can stay," I muttered, the weight of the words hitting me like a physical blow. "I'm not sure I can keep doing this, Yasmin." "I understand," she whispered, and for the first time, I thought she actually did. I ended the call and stood there in the street for a long time, feeling like I was floating in some strange, dreamlike state. The reality of what had happened still hadn't fully hit me. The devastation, the anger, the betrayal, none of it seemed real. It was like I was watching someone else's life unfold in front of me, unable to find my place in it. I had always thought that love, trust, and commitment were the foundation of a marriage. But what happens when that foundation crumbles? What happens when the very person you trust the most has torn it all down? I didn't know the answers. I didn't know if I ever would. All I knew was that I was no longer the man I was before. I wasn't the man who believed in fairy tale endings. I wasn't the man who thought love could conquer all. I had been broken, and I didn't know if I would ever be able to put the pieces back together again. The city lights blurred as I walked away, not knowing where I was going, not knowing if I was running towards something or away from everything. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop moving forward, even if I didn't know what lay ahead. The silence had become my constant companion, and it was louder than any words could ever be. And I knew, with a sickening certainty, that it would never be quiet again. The days that followed were a blur of half-sleep and restless thoughts. I wandered through my days as though I were walking through someone else's life, unable to shake the feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. Every moment I spent away from her, every minute spent not confronting her, not understanding what happened, felt like a betrayal of my own existence. But I had made a choice, hadn't I? To step away, to give myself the space to breathe, to think. Still, it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. It didn't make the feeling of her absence any less sharp. I moved through work like a ghost, responding to emails without actually reading them, nodding along in meetings, but never truly hearing what was said. Everyone around me seemed so normal, so unaffected. I envied them. They hadn't been through the seismic shift I had. They hadn't learned the horrible truth about the person they loved most. I could feel the walls of my world closing in, as if I were being suffocated by my own thoughts. Everywhere I went, I was reminded of her, of the woman I thought I knew, of the woman I thought I could trust. And yet, there was another version of her, hidden beneath the surface, a version I had never seen. It wasn't just the affair that tore me apart. It was the realization that the version of Yasmin I had loved, the one who held my heart and dreams in her hands, might never have existed at all. I spent the weekend at my apartment, alone. I hadn't gone back to the house. Yasmin had sent me a few texts, but I ignored them. I didn't know what to say, what to feel. I wasn't sure if I was still angry, if I was still heartbroken, or if I was simply numb. Everything seemed too big, too overwhelming. So I stayed in my little apartment, trying to find some sense of control, some semblance of normality. But there was nothing normal about this. Nothing about this would ever be the same again. On Sunday night, I finally gave in and called her. I hadn't wanted to. I hadn't wanted to hear her voice. But something pulled at me, something deep down inside that told me I needed to face this, needed to confront her. It was a call I had been avoiding, a conversation that had been hanging over us both like a storm waiting to break. When she picked up, her voice was soft, hesitant. "Marko, you're calling. Does that mean?" I took a deep breath. "Yeah," I said, my voice hoarse, though I didn't mean for it to be. "Yeah, I'm calling." "Are you okay?" she asked, the concern in her voice genuine. But it wasn't enough to make me forget what had happened. "I've been so worried about you. I miss you." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "It's not about that, Yasmin. I'm not okay. I'm not sure I can be. I don't know how to get past this." She was silent for a moment, and I could hear the shakiness in her breath as if she were trying to hold back tears. "I never wanted to hurt you. You have to know that. I never thought it would go this far." "How far did it go?" I asked, the bitterness creeping into my tone before I could stop it. "How much further did it go, Yasmin? Did you ever think about me? About us? Or was it just easier with him?" Her voice wavered, but she spoke slowly, carefully, like she was choosing her words as if each one carried weight. "I made a mistake, Marko. A huge one, and I can't undo it. I can't fix it. But I need you to know that I never meant to betray you. I never meant for it to get this far. I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know what I was doing. And I hate myself for it. I hate you for it, too." I whispered, though the words hurt more than I thought they would. It wasn't just anger anymore. It wasn't just betrayal. It was something deeper, something broken. "I'm angry at you, Yasmin. But more than that, I'm angry at myself for not seeing it, for not knowing, for believing that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could feel the weight of the words hanging between us, unspoken, but alive, like a living thing in the room. "I'm so sorry," she said finally, the words coming out in a rush, almost as if she was choking on them. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make things right. But I want to try. Please, Marko, give me a chance to fix this. I'm begging you." I closed my eyes, hearing her pleas, feeling the tension building in my chest. How was I supposed to fix this? How was I supposed to trust her again? How could I move past something so massive, so unforgivable? I didn't know. And that was the terrifying part. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. I don't know if I can ever feel the same way about you." The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. For the first time, I heard the rawness in her voice, the desperation. "Please don't say that, Marko. Please don't say that yet." "I don't know what else to say," I answered, my voice breaking. "I don't know if I can keep pretending like I don't feel this hole in my chest. Like everything we've built doesn't feel like a lie." "Please," she whispered again, but I couldn't bring myself to listen to her anymore. I couldn't let her convince me that things could just go back to how they were. The truth was, I didn't know if I wanted them to. I didn't know if I wanted her back. I didn't know if we were even something worth salvaging. "I need more time," I said finally, each word painful to say. "I need to think. I need to figure out what I want. I'm not sure what that is yet." Her voice cracked. "I'll wait. I'll wait for however long it takes. Please don't give up on me." But I wasn't sure if I was waiting for her anymore. I wasn't sure if I was waiting for the pieces of us to fall back into place or if I was just running from the truth. The truth that maybe this was over. Maybe we were over. The line went silent, and I ended the call before either of us could say anything more. I stood there for a long time, staring at the phone in my hand, trying to make sense of what had just happened, trying to make sense of everything that had brought me to this point. There was no going back from here. I couldn't unhear her words. I couldn't unfeel the betrayal, the hurt, the anger that had built inside me. But I also couldn't pretend like this wasn't something that needed to be faced. I couldn't run from it anymore. The silence was unbearable, but it was the only thing left. The only thing that remained between us. And I wasn't sure if it was the silence of waiting, or the silence of goodbye. Days passed, and still, I found myself unable to make a decision. The longer I stayed away from her, the more distant Yasmin became in my thoughts. It wasn't that I had stopped caring, it was the opposite. The more time I spent away from her, the more I realized just how deeply she had cut me. And yet, I couldn't seem to let go. There was a constant tug-of-war inside me. Part of me wanted to fix everything, to somehow piece our life back together, while the other part of me was suffocating, gasping for air, begging for the pain to stop. The days blurred into each other, filled with thoughts of her, memories of the way she laughed, the way she would curl up next to me on the couch, her warmth filling the space between us. The images of the good times kept flashing before me, like they were a different lifetime. It felt impossible to reconcile that version of Yasmin with the one who had betrayed me. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. I couldn't stop wondering if there was a way to fix this. I didn't want to be the man who gave up, the one who walked away from love. But I also didn't want to be the man who forgave her too easily, the one who allowed himself to be fooled again. I was trapped in a cycle of indecision, torn between my desire to find closure and my fear of making the wrong choice. I took a week off from work, not because I was overwhelmed, but because I needed space. I needed time to clear my head, to breathe without feeling suffocated by the weight of everything that had happened. I spent hours walking around the city, lost in my thoughts, trying to make sense of the mess my life had become. Each time I passed a familiar street or building, memories of Yasmin and I would flood my mind. But they weren't just good memories, they were poison now. They were tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal. I tried to reach out to my friends, to get some perspective, but it wasn't the same. No one understood what I was going through. Everyone told me I deserved better, that I should walk away, that I shouldn't let someone treat me the way Yasmin had. But it wasn't that simple. I loved her. I couldn't just throw that away, no matter how much she had hurt me. On the 5th day of my self-imposed exile, I finally gave in. I found myself standing outside our house again. The house that had once been a symbol of everything I wanted. I hadn't planned on coming here. I hadn't made up my mind about anything. But there I was, staring at the front door, wondering what I was even hoping to find. I stood there for what felt like hours, trying to summon the courage to knock. Finally, I did. My knuckles tapped the door lightly, almost timidly, as though I was afraid of what might be on the other side. When Yasmin answered, she looked like a different person. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, her face pale, but there was something about her presence that still made my heart ache. She didn't speak at first, just looked at me, as if she wasn't sure if I was real. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, a silent recognition of everything that had happened between us. "I didn't think you'd come," she whispered after a long pause, her voice barely audible, like she was afraid that speaking too loudly might make everything worse. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to begin. The words I had rehearsed in my mind felt useless now. I hadn't come here for a fight. I hadn't come here for answers, either. I had come because I needed to see her. I needed to know if there was still something left between us, something worth salvaging. "I don't know what I'm doing here, Yasmin," I said, finally breaking the silence, my voice thick with uncertainty. "I don't know if there's anything left for us. But I can't keep running from this." Her face crumpled as she stepped aside, allowing me into the house. As I crossed the threshold, it felt like stepping into a memory. The familiar scent of our home, the feel of the walls that had once been filled with our laughter, it all felt distant now. The space between us had grown so wide that I couldn't find the familiar comfort I had once found here. We sat down on the couch, not speaking for a while, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the guilt that consumed her every time she looked at me. But there was something else there, too, something I hadn't expected. I saw that she was still fighting for us, still fighting for something, anything, to bring us back together. "I've been thinking about what you said," she finally spoke, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "About how you don't know if you can trust me again. And I understand. I know I've broken something between us. But I swear, Marko, I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you like this." I didn't respond right away. I didn't know how to respond. The silence between us felt like a chasm, and every word we spoke only seemed to widen it further. The truth was, I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if I could ever feel the same way about her again. But there was a small part of me, a part that still loved her, that wanted to believe in the possibility of healing. I don't know if I can forgive you, Yasmin, I said, my voice breaking slightly despite myself. But I want to understand. I need to know why it happened, why you kept it from me. Her face crumpled again, and she took a deep breath before speaking. It's not just about Jake. It's about me. It's about everything that was wrong in me that I couldn't fix. I felt invisible, like I wasn't enough, like you were drifting away from me, even though you didn't know it. And Jake, he gave me attention. He made me feel seen again. But it was never about love. It was about filling the emptiness inside me. And I know now that it was a terrible decision, a selfish one, but I didn't know how to stop. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I could feel the weight of her confession, the vulnerability in her voice. It wasn't an excuse. It wasn't justification. But it was the truth, and hearing it was like a slap in the face, both painful and freeing at the same time. I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. I don't know if I can come back from this. But I need time, Yasmin. Time to figure out if I can even look at you the same way. I'll wait, she whispered, her voice breaking. I'll wait for however long it takes. But please, please don't give up on me. I stood up then, unsure of what to do, unsure of what I wanted. The air between us was thick with unspoken words, and for a moment, I felt like I was drowning in them. I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if we could go back to what we once had. But I knew one thing. I wasn't ready to give up yet. I didn't have the answers. But for the first time in a long time, I was ready to find them. I just didn't know where this road would take me. And I wasn't sure I wanted to know. But I had to find out. The days after that conversation felt like they passed in slow motion, each moment stretching out before me as if the weight of every decision was pulling me down. I couldn't say everything was magically better after that night. It wasn't some sudden epiphany, some easy moment where everything clicked back into place. No, the road to healing wasn't like that. It wasn't a straight line. But something had shifted. I had shifted. And for the first time in weeks, there was a tiny spark of hope, buried deep beneath the anger and the pain. We agreed to take things one step at a time. Yasmin, with her endless apologies and heartfelt promises, was determined to prove that she was ready to make things right. I couldn't just forgive her in one conversation, 1 week, or even 1 month. But she had given me something that mattered more than anything else. She gave me the space to feel, to think, to make my own decision without pressure. And, slowly, that pressure began to lift. We started small. We went out for coffee, just the two of us, no expectations. It felt awkward at first. Every time I looked at her, I remembered the pain, the betrayal. But I also remembered the good times, the late-night talks, the laughter, the adventures we had shared before all of this had happened. And with each passing day, the distance between us began to shrink. Yasmin didn't expect me to forgive her right away. She didn't rush me, and I didn't rush myself either. I took the time I needed to process everything. We began having more conversations about the things that really mattered. Not just the affair, not just the hurt, but the reasons behind it. Yasmin opened up about her insecurities, the things she hadn't told me before. She admitted that she had felt lost, like she had forgotten who she was beyond being my wife. It wasn't an excuse, but it helped me understand the choices she made. She wasn't perfect, but neither was I. And I think that's when the healing began, not when we forgave each other, but when we understood each other. A month passed, and I realized something important. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It wasn't about pretending nothing had happened. It was about choosing to move forward despite the hurt. It was about deciding that what we had was worth fighting for, worth mending, piece by piece. I don't know what the future holds for us. I don't know if we'll ever be the same as we were before, or if we'll even be better. But I do know this. We're trying. Yasmin is trying. I'm trying. And that's all we can ask for in a relationship: honesty, effort, and the willingness to grow together. We've started to rebuild the trust, slowly but surely. There are still moments of doubt, moments when I wonder if I've made the right choice. But every time I look at her, I remember why I fell in love with her in the first place. The kindness in her eyes, the way she laughs, how she cares for the people she loves. I'm not the same person I was before. I'm stronger now, more aware of who I am and what I need. And Yasmin, I think, is finally starting to feel whole again, like she doesn't need someone else to define her. A few months later, we took a trip together, just the two of us, to a small cabin in the mountains. It was quiet, peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of the past between us. We spent the weekend hiking, talking, reconnecting in a way we hadn't in years. There was still so much to work through, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid of the future or of making mistakes. I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that we were doing it together. We both understood now that love wasn't just about the good times. It was about learning from the hard ones, growing through them. We weren't perfect, but we were willing to try. And sometimes, that's enough. When we came back from that trip, Yasmin took my hand in the parking lot of the airport. "Do you think we'll be okay?" she asked, her voice vulnerable but hopeful. I looked at her, really looked at her, and smiled. "I think we're going to be better than okay." And for the first time in months, I truly believed it. The silence that had once felt suffocating now felt like a blank canvas, waiting for us to fill it with new memories, new moments, and a new version of our love. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that was all that mattered.